I was cut from sniper school on a Wednesday I can still taste. Chalk dust on the firing line, Georgia heat rising off the berm at Fort Moore, and the kind of wind that looks lazy until it shoves you when it matters. The cadre called it a teaching breeze. I called it the one that pushed my last chance half an inch from redemption. It wasn't a dramatic failure, and that would have been cleaner. I made my databooks neat, my dope tidy. I could stack 5 rounds into a group that looked like a bug bite at 400. I could read Mirage until the world's wavy lines felt like a second language. I did the math under stress, solved for drop, held for spin drift, even whispered corrections to my spotter when the wind went catty-corner across the range. Then came the stress shoot. Sprint, drag a dummy, climb, drop, breathe twice, and take a hostage rescue shot at 600 with a quarter-value wind fluttering the paper just enough to mock me. The round tore the ear off the hostage silhouette. The cadre didn't yell. He didn't need to. He pressed his thumb against the paper, measuring the miss like he could rewind the bullet. Then he wrote a single block letter on my score sheet. ELI. They say the course doesn't make snipers. It confirms them. What it confirmed about me was this. My math was right. My nerve was almost, and almost didn't count. I handed over the rifle like I was returning a part of myself. The bolt felt heavier with shame. I kept my face quiet as I walked off the line. Behind me, the wind pretended it had nothing to do with it. My name is Kaya Elsner. By the time my elimination memo caught up with my unit, our battalion had rotated to Italy, Vicenza, the bright stone side of the army where you're always halfway between a training event and a cathedral. I'd wanted to arrive there with a new tab, and the quiet confidence that comes with being the person they call when the shot is impossible. I arrived with a hole where that certainty should have been. The army didn't throw me away. It put me where it puts a lot of almosts, in the line, in the work, in the parts of the machine that keep the barrels clean and the radios talking. I served as an armorer and a range NCO in a rifle company that rotated through Grafenwehr and Hohenfels like they were second homes. I signed out M110s and M2010s to men who called them my gun like they'd named a dog. I logged optics serial numbers until the digits twitched in my sleep. And on every range day, when the line went cold and the brass lay warm in the gravel, I stayed behind, with a torque wrench and a notebook, checking mounts and zeros like they were prayers. Humiliation can curdle into bitterness. Mine did not. I fed it into the same quiet fire that had kept me alive at 17 when I learned to be invisible in a house where noise drew fists. Later, that fire kept me in school long enough to join a world where effort had rules. The Army had rules I loved. Physics, repeatability, the strange, tender honesty of a rifle that does exactly what you tell it to do. No more, no less. Sniper school had handed me the truest rule of all. When your round lands half an inch wrong, no one's explanation matters. So I made myself a promise. I might never wear the schoolhouse's coveted certificate, but I would never again be the woman who flinched at the invisible hand of wind. If I had to die on a hill of wind calls and elevation knobs, I'd die fluent. The promise looked small on paper and big in practice. In Germany's training areas, the weather could change between a trigger squeeze and an exhale. I taped a cheap Kestrel to my plate carrier, not because gadgets make shooters, but because they make honest students. I practiced reading Mirage at different magnifications, learned the long grass's grammar, watched flags on the range as if they were a row of stubborn children, each telling their own version of the truth. I stopped keeping dope as if numbers alone could save me, and started writing the story around each group. Light went flat at 1400. Mirage drooped. Scent of rain, pines lifted their tops like they heard something I didn't. I made fun of myself for the poetry of it, until those notes saved me from a flyer. SFC Navarro, a company's senior NCO, and the closest thing I had to a mentor, liked to show up when I was alone. He'd find me on the bench behind the arms room, We're at the end of the longer bays where the trash cans collect lost labels, and the ground remembers every knelt knee. "You still mad at the wind?" he asked one evening, as the Bavarian dusk cooled the concrete. "I'm learning its accent," I said. He grunted, approval, or at least an end to conversation. "You'll get another shot. Maybe not the schoolhouse, but the world's big. It has a way of building moments for the ones who won't lie to themselves." He tipped his head toward my notebook. "Don't lie to that." I didn't. When I made a bad call, I wrote it down.
Kaya. Navarro's voice found me without prelude. He appeared at my shoulder like he'd walked out of the wind. "General's convoy diverted to the East Admin Road. Someone just punched 2 rounds into a staff car and a third into a water buffalo. We've got eyes on a flash from the maintenance yard roof and maybe a second shooter in the tree line. MPs are coming, but they're thin. Can you get me a gun high, now?" He didn't ask if I wanted to. He knew. "Yes," I said. It wasn't brave. It was the only word left. We moved in a low, quick line under the high berm to the ladder at the far end of the range, a maintenance platform that usually overlooked boring things, targets, the smug straightness of lanes, the long quiet where people practiced getting it right. Today, it would have to see something else. "Take the M2010, Navarro said, already shoving a rifle case against my hands. His eyes were flat in that calm that means everything is on fire. "I want the 300 win. If that's a second shooter in the trees, we'll need the extra reach." "Which glass is cleanest?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I'd touched every scope that morning. I felt for the one I'd torqued last, the one that had purred under my palm like a machine satisfied with its own honest fit. I pulled the bolt to check chamber, slid a magazine home until it kissed, and slung the rifle while Navarro climbed. At the top, the wind slapped us like an old rival who'd been waiting. It blew straight through the platform and took the boredom with it. From up there, the training area unfolded like a problem set. The berm was a patient brown line. Beyond it, the world got messy. The maintenance yard lay off to our left rear, a corrugated roof the color of regret. Past that, a stretch of thin pines that pretended to be cover and succeeded only at being inconsistent. The admin road ran like a pale ribbon through it, bright enough in places to catch a scope glint, if you were careless. The war we were practicing was gone. The one that replaced it was ugly and real. I dropped prone and built my position like I'd always wanted to do it, bone on bone, heel of the stog deep in the pocket, sling tension set to that exact stitch between comfortable and locked. I breathed once, twice, let my heart fall into the blessed mechanical rhythm of a machine that had found the right gear. "Spotter?" Navarro asked, even though he already slid in beside me with binos. "I've got me," I said, then added, "Sir," which made him snort once. "You get me the world." Through the glass, the maintenance yard roof sharpened. It had the sad litter of all old roofs. A bucket turned on its side, a length of discarded rope, a sun-bleached rag that had tried to be useful and failed. In the near corner, near a vent stack, a shadow didn't act like a shadow should. It breathed the wrong way. It kissed the edge of the vent with the kind of care light can't. I dialed my magnification down, not up, to get more field. Then I saw it. A wink that wasn't wind, a glint of something that wanted to hide and couldn't completely. Glass. Scope. Not ours. Roof, maintenance yard, near side corner behind vent, 1 shooter. I breathed. Angled 10 up from my bore, maybe 11. I've got 800 and change? Navarro had the rangefinder up. 875 to the vent. Call it 875 to center mass if he peaks. 875. In that wind. With the general's life somewhere to the east, tucked into a convoy that had learned humility fast. I started my math out loud, not for Navarro, but to force my breathing to ride words. .300 Win Mag, 290 grain. At 875 on this temp, I'm dialing 6.5 mils for drop. I checked my old sins, accounted for the angle, for the barrel's desire to pretend the world curves more than my bullet will admit, for spindrift that nudges right at this distance like a shrewd liar selling a small truth. Add .2 for spin, subtract a hair for angle. Wind is left to right at 12 steady, gusts to 16. Full value, call it 1.8 to 2.2 mils to hold. Trees are saying it's walking between 12 and 14. Flags are lying at 10. Mirage is honest at 12, Navarro murmured. Mirage doesn't try to please anyone, I said, almost smiling. I'll believe the shimmer. Convoy is stuck at the dip, crackled the radio at Navarro's shoulder. We've got a vehicle disabled, small arms fire from the trees. We've got eyes on a roof but no shot. Where the hell are my MPs? Tell them to shut up or speak in useful nouns, Navarro said into his mic, his voice velvet and steel. Then to me, softer. We've got one shot at the roof before he simply ducks. You don't need me to say it. I need you to say if you want me to wait. I want you to do what your notebook trained you to do. He touched my elbow. Do not lie to the wind. The roof shadow moved, careful, clever. A barrel eased forward just enough to clear the vent, threaded, black, the kind of tool you buy when you believe no one is watching. He'd chosen the only piece of cover that gave him both height and a decent line on the admin road, then trusted that a training area on a sunny afternoon would keep being exactly what it had been for years, safe. He'd forgotten people like me exist precisely because the world doesn't stay that way. My cheek weld found its home. The world at 875 became both far and simple. The reticle laid its clean geometry across tar and shadow and wrong intent. The wind moved the Mirage in soft, honest rivers. I watched them for the beat between gusts, the small stillness that isn't truly still, the way a liar breathes between sentences. Hold at 1.9, I told myself, out loud because I am no longer embarrassed about needing my own voice. Let the gust pass, take the valley. Kaya, Navarro said, and I heard the part of his voice where he keeps people he's decided not to lose. If you miss, he'll learn. If you hit the vent, he'll disappear. If you hit the glass, he might have a friend. I didn't nod. We do the first thing right. The rest becomes math we can live with. The world narrowed to a triangle of time: breath, heartbeat, wind. On my exhale, the gust softened. Mirage slid from scaly to smooth. The pine tops agreed. They went from shrugging to listening. Somewhere below, a siren tried to be brave. My finger found the wall of the trigger like it had always been there. I pressed until the shot surprised me, like a true thing. Recoil lifted, gentle and total, the way a good rifle pushes and not punches. I rode the scope, already walking my hold for a second round if the first had lied. Through the glass, the bullet story unfolded in the only time that matters. Now. The trace arced, a pale line of promise, faint as a breath on glass, a fraction high off my call because the platform jolted under us with a gust that arrived late, like weather can. The round sped toward the glint by the vent, a streak the color of decision. I had a second to think about the half-inch that had cost me school, about the difference between almost and enough, about how the wind doesn't care what you deserve, but sometimes, in a narrow window of honesty, it will consent to be understood. The trace reached the roof's edge. I started my follow-up press, already adjusting a hair more into the wind, ready to stitch a second truth through the first if the world asked for it. Someone screamed in the distance. One of ours or not, I couldn't tell. The radio choked on overlapping panic and then went quiet, as if the air itself wanted to hear what happened next. In the glass, the glint winked out. I couldn't see the impact. I couldn't see the man. I saw the rifle shudder, then vanished like it had been a rumor someone got tired of repeating. The vent coughed dust. A rag flipped and went still. Mirage went back to its soft rivers. The wind's honest handwriting returned to casual.
"Talk to me," Navarro breathed. "I think," I started, and then the world answered in metal. From the tree line behind the admin road, the place we'd suspected but not yet confirmed, a second muzzle flashed, low and mean. Rounds tore up gravel near the convoy. A staff sergeant dove behind a door like it would volunteer to be armor. The general stayed down, smart enough to let chaos fill the gaps. And then a shape sprinted from the pine shadow, light on his feet, rifle low, angling for a better angle on a man who had medals and a target painted on his itinerary. I swung, reticle chasing a runner at just under 900, quartering away, wind still pressing, gust teasing the line like a cat. He was doing everything right and everything wrong, moving fast, using angles, counting on us to be slow, and forgetting someone might already be spun up with data and a grudge. "I've got him," I said, and even I could hear the thinness in my voice. I was dialing a life with a hand that knew too much about loss. 900 flat, give me 9.0 mils, and a prayer to the part of physics that forgives pride. "Kaya," Navarro said again, voice low enough to ground a storm. "Breathe. Wait for him to cross the light patch. Wind reads easier there." He was right. The road opened to a pale bite of dust ahead. If the man crossed it, mirage would show his edges clean. He'd be a swimmer, breaking surface, a sin caught in sunlight. I pulled a breath that tried to be a sob and turned it into math. He ran. He hit the light. The wind leaned. I pressed. And then something I did not expect at all happened. My scope went black. It wasn't a failure. It wasn't a flinch. It was a shape, broad, sudden, filling my optic as a body threw itself across my rifle like a door slamming. Weight crushed my sling. Elbow slammed my stock. The shot broke ugly into the platform's railing as a new voice snarled, "Stand down," and an arm tried to rake the bolt from my hand. I didn't think. I moved. My left hand cut hard, shoved the intruder's forearm off the rifle. My right elbow drove back into ribs, a grunt, a curse, the kind of pain word that makes rank irrelevant. Navarro pivoted with predator speed, his boot hooking the newcomer's ankle, sending him down under the rail. Binos clattered. The radio squawked with someone else's surprise. I rolled to reacquire, scope swinging, breath now a drum. In the instant it took to find the light patch again, the runner vanished into the pines. The convoy engine screamed at someone to move. The general's detail poured out of doors like a beehive kicked, forming a shudder of bodies and armor, the kind of human geometry that trades angles for lives. "Who the hell are you?" Navarro hissed at the man on the platform decking, voice low and deadly. "Major Alan Sykes," the man spat, blue eyes hot with authority he thought should answer every question. He wore an armband I didn't trust, and a jaw that had never apologized. "Division staff. Those are my orders. No unsanctioned engagement while a general is exposed." He jabbed a finger toward the admin road like punctuation to a stupid sentence. "Your orders," Navarro said with exquisite calm, just turned a clean shot into a ghost. "You don't fire without command clearance," Sykes barked, climbing to his knees. He smelled like aftershave and policy. "If you hit the principal—" "I'm not the one aiming at the principal," I said, before I could stop my mouth. His gaze snapped to me, cutting and bright. I felt the old familiar heat of men deciding what I am. It lasted the length of a bad thought. "What's your name, specialist?" "Elsner. Kaya." "Elsner," he said, like the name tasted sour. "You are relieved." "No. One word, final. She stays on glass. You get off my platform." "Your platform?" Sykes laughed once, a dog's bark. "You think this belongs to you?" "I think," Navarro said with exquisite calm, "the next 10 seconds might decide whether a grandmother gets a folded flag. And I think the person who can read this wind isn't you." The radio at Navarro's shoulder erupted with the kind of clarity that fear can buy. Convoy taking sporadic fire from East Tree Line. No casualties. Shooter lost behind pines. Possible movement north. We need overwatch with reach. Now. Sykes hesitated, a tremor of doubt in a man who'd been certain too long. He opened his mouth to argue with physics again. "Move," Navarro said, and there was a dark mercy in it that would have made a better man obey. Sykes didn't. He reached for my bolt again. I didn't allow it. I don't remember standing. I remember a sound my throat made that I've only ever heard when a thing I love is threatened. I planted my boot on Sykes's hand with exactly the pressure necessary to make him stop proving himself. He yelped, more in outrage than pain. I leaned over the rifle like a mother over a child in a crowd. "Kaya," Navarro said, and the part of his voice that keeps the living alive put its hand on my shoulder. "Find him. Be first." I dropped back into the scope. The wind had shifted a hair toward quartering half value. Mirage had thinned. The sun cresting a cloud edge changed our light from flannel to glass. The pines were no cover anymore. They were contrast. The runner made his mistake. He crossed a shadow seam into the brighter cut near the drainage ditch and paused to look back at the noise we'd made on our platform. Ego. Curiosity. The two things that cancel 1,000 good habits. 902 by the rangefinder's chirp. I didn't dial. At that distance, with a target who could decide not to be, dialing was time I didn't own. I held. 9 mils down, 2 in a skosh into the wind. A breath. A prayer I don't remember choosing. The kind of quiet that isn't silence, but agreement with the part of the world that wants you to do this one right thing. My finger found the wall. A shadow fell across my glass again. "Don't," Sykes snarled, voice right at my ear. "That's an order." I pressed. The rifle broke. The world tilted toward whatever happens after a bullet leaves you, the truth that doesn't care how you feel about it. And even before the recoil finished its story, I knew the wind had changed.
Changed. The bullet had already bought its ticket. The gust that leaned across the platform in the split second after my press wasn't the wind I'd read. It was its cousin, late and mean. Trace told the story before the sound reached me. Arc, drift, the smallest flirt to the right. At 902 meters, a hair is a haircut. I held into it, not with dials, with bones. The round touched down a palm width farther right than I had ordered, which would have been a miss if the runner hadn't done the thing ego makes you do when the world seems to turn and look at you. He squared to the light. Impact was ugly music. His right shoulder popped back. He folded like a hinge and hit dirt, rolling toward the drainage ditch with the animal desire to be lower than danger. I felt the click of my brain moving into the place it goes when a problem stops being moral and becomes mechanical. "Hit," I said. "Right shoulder, through and through, possible clavicle. He's mobile." "Finish him," Navarro said. "Not vicious, not kind, true." I rode recoil like a wave, tracked the flinch and the roll. He clawed for the ditch and I saw where he tried to disappear. I held 9 mils again, less wind, 1.6, because the gust had spent itself and the pines had gone back to nodding like old men at a long story. He put his head up to choose his next move. I took the choice away. Second round. In. The skull's quiet break. The body went still in that particular way you never mistake for a decision to play possum. "Roof?" Navarro asked, already sliding in his binos. Silent. Vent cough dust. No follow-up glint. "Overwatch, this is Convoy 6. We're static at the dip. 2 flats, 1 engine out. Small arms fire ceased. Assessing casualties. Who took those shots?" Navarro thumbed transmit. "Range Overwatch. This net is unsafe for full answer. Short version, friendly. Stay put, build your wall, watch the trees east. We see 1 runner down, 1 probable on roof, neutralized." "Copy." Came back. Taut as wire. "We'll hold." I scanned with the glass wide, not chasing ghosts, looking for the things that didn't act like the day they were in. The admin road shimmered with heat and panic. The convoy had done the smart thing. Door shields, angles, rifles finding sectors like they've been practicing for a year for this minute. The general stayed low, profile small, a set of eyes behind sunglasses, revealed and hidden behind door metal, his detail painting arcs into the green. On the maintenance yard roof, the wrong shadow didn't move. Dust settled like indecision. The corrugated metal held its breath. Beside me, Major Sykes was breathing hard, not from effort, from outrage. Paper outranks, oxygen outruns. He was a man used to being the ending of things. I felt him coiling words for me. "Say it," I said, not taking my eye from the scope. "You disobeyed a direct order, twice." "I obeyed physics," I said, still watching the tree line. "You'll like the after-action report." "I'll like your weapon impounded," he shot back, "and your stripes." "I don't have stripes," I said mildly, "just a name." Navarro's hand landed on the back of my triceps, warm and anchoring, a human sandbag. "To Sykes, you'll like that my recorder has been running since you tackled my shooter," he said quietly. "Chain of custody, Major. It's as boring as it sounds unless a general dies." A crack from below, rifle not ours, yanked the line of my attention rightward. I snapped to a sliver of movement 300 meters farther north than the first runner. A shape kneeling behind a tangle of windfall, smart enough to pick the gray-on-gray parts of the world. The barrel of his rifle wore a suppressor like a promise. He was aiming not at the convoy now, but at the soldiers breaking toward the maintenance yard. "Second shooter in the down timber, north of the ditch. Range 1035 by rough, standby for clean." "Rangefinder," Navarro said. The unit chirped. 1028 to the log, call it 30 to the shoulder." "Copy." I didn't dial. Time is a currency you spend or hoard. Today's exchange rate was brutal. The mirage there was thinner, the heat less honest because the ground had been shaded for hours before. Wind at that slice read 8 to 10 left to right. I held 9.3 down for the drop and almost 2 for wind. Then I waited, which felt like sin and was actually the only prayer that ever matters in my work, the one where you ask the world to be briefly consistent. He rose a centimeter to adjust his sight, his shoulder, then his cheek. Ego again, the need to see more than you should. I pressed. The world accepted. He went back in a way a person doesn't choose. The suppressor kissed dirt. The log shivered like a thing that had just remembered gravity could be cruel. "Shooter 2 neutralized," I said. "I need confirmation on roof before we call this phase done." On the way came a new voice on the net, higher, young, controlled. "Ridgeback 2 on ladder. You got my back?" "You already had it." "Roof is quiet but disrespectful. Assume 1. Watch the vent for heat shimmer." "Copy," he said, and it warmed a part of me that had forgotten what it was like to be trusted by a voice you can't see. Sykes snorted. "Are you going to start issuing commands on division nets now?" "I'm going to keep people breathing," I said. "If that bothers you, file your feelings." He stepped closer. "That's enough." Navarro moved between us without looking like he moved at all. "Major," he said, "and I have never heard a man put so much velvet around steel. Step back, or I will put you back." Silence grew teeth for 3 seconds. Sykes did the kind of calculus that includes careers and headlines. He stepped back. Only a little. "Ridgeback 2 on roof," the radio reported. "We've got 1 down by vent, 1 rifle, looks like a custom build, suppressor hot. He's expired. No movement else. Securing." "Copy," Navarro said. "Roof is yours. Maintain eyes north and east. We're engaging further out." A shiver ran through me that had nothing to do with wind or elevation. The space inside my ribs where failure had lived since Georgia felt less occupied. "You were wrong about me," Navarro said softly, as if he'd been saving the sentence for a decade. "You weren't an almost. You were early." I didn't say anything. I had a general to keep unshot. "Convoy 6, the radio called. "We show roof secured. 1 shooter down north of ditch. Overwatch has eyes out to 1 click. Suggest immediate extraction of principal to safe site Bravo." "Negative," came back, brisk. "Route to Bravo compromised. Engineers en route to clear. We hold 3 mics." 3 minutes is a lifetime if you're the person someone wants to kill, and a blink if you're the person stopping it. Mirage at distance smudged in a way that made me itch. Not wind, not heat, interference, a shimmering with a heartbeat of its own. "Do you see that?" I asked. He sees it, already glassing far. "East Ridge just left of the White Snag, 2,000 plus." 2,000, I echoed, not because I doubted him, because it's a number you say to make your hands honest. That's beyond our nice afternoon," he said, "not if it's glass and not if it's a drone." I sucked in air. The shimmer resolved into a speck, then a not sky thing, a quadcopter. No, 6 rotors, heavier than Hobby, light enough to be a problem. It wobbled once in a way that told me whoever flew it wasn't a kid in the park. They were compensating for distance, fighting the wind with the control input a mile away. It carried something under its abdomen that didn't belong on a day like this. The shape was too blocky to be a camera. The glint on its edge was teeth. "Drone, East Ridge, 2,000 plus, inbound low," I said, calm because panic is useless. "EOD," Navarro asked the net, "are you hearing this?" "EOD copies. That's not ours. If it's carrying, that's likely a shape charge or, God help us, a frag ball. Overwatch, can you engage?" "At 2,000? Sykes barked. "Absolutely not. You'll miss and blow it over the convoy."
"I wasn't asking you," Navarro said without heat. "The 300 could touch it if the world cooperated, and if I did something I don't like doing in front of people who keep score. Shoot at a thing the size of a dinner plate in wind with a time of flight long enough to think thoughts between trigger and truth." The angle to the drone was shallow. Misses could carry into trees, into unknowns. But a drone over a convoy wasn't a math test. It was a coin flip with shrapnel. "Hold your fire," Sykes snapped. "That's final." "Convoy 6, Navarro said, stepping over him. "If drone crosshairs you, your only shelter is luck. We can try to cut its legs." A beat. Then, "Overwatch, you are cleared at your discretion," the convoy lead said, a man who'd counted more coins than Sykes had forms. "I dialed for 2,000 because there's a point where holds become art, and I disrespect art when lives are cheap." The drop was the kind of number that makes inexperienced shooters whistle. I didn't. Elevation knob rolled, and I felt the history in my fingertips. Every morning I'd stayed after the line went cold, every note I'd written about Mirage that settled like polished glass before storms, every humiliation I'd filed under fuel. Wind was 8 left to right, gusting 11, but between us and the drone it was not consistent. The river cut made its own weather, the trees another, the bare slope a third. The Mirage spoke in at least 3 dialects at once. I chose the median and promised myself I'd forgive the world if it betrayed me. "Send it," Navarro said, and I am not ashamed to say I sent a small part of myself with the bullet because sometimes that's what it takes to accept that the outcome is not yours. The rifle bucked steady. Trace rose and then seemed to hang in thinking air. It arced, and I had time to imagine it would politely slide under the belly of the drone and vanish into a moral that says life is fair when you ask nicely. Then the quad twitched. Not away, down. A rotor hiccuped. A momentary voltage sag or a pilot adjusting to gust. The bullet crossed the space the rotor had surrendered, the drone jerked sideways like something had slapped it. The payload wobbled like a bad thought. And for a heartbeat, the thing held together, because machines don't die of fear, they die of broken parts. Then it broke. It wasn't the heroic fireball, those lie. It came apart like a promise. A rotor flew one way, the payload another. The payload popped as it tumbled, a small concussive cough, not the giant scream Sykes had conjured with his warning. Shards rained into the drainage between us and the convoy. The shock lifted dust and dropped it like a prayer someone changed their mind about mid-sentence. On the net, someone whooped, someone else swore softly. I exhaled a breath I hadn't admitted to holding. Sykes didn't celebrate. Of course he didn't. "Congratulations," he said acidly. "You detonated an explosive over friendlies." "Not over," Navarro said. "Patient as old stone. Downrange. Lateral. And we didn't detonate it. We convinced gravity to help." "I'm going to write your reprimand with a fountain pen," Sykes muttered. "Use ink the color of almost," I said, still on glass. Navarro choked a laugh that wasn't entirely a laugh. The
The convoy's icon winked on her tablet as it began to move again. Slow, careful, a group of people who had just remembered their bodies were mortal and their training was the only religion worth candlelight. Ridgeback 2, I called. Status. Roof secure, came back. One shooter, KIA. Found a phone. Flight mode, but there's a text on the lock screen. Blue gets the last word. Navarro and I looked at each other. Blue. Sykes's armband had a blue stripe through the division seal. Maybe a coincidence. The world is made of them. Maybe a hook. I didn't like either option. We're bagging the phone, Ridgeback 2 added. MPs are en route. Copy. Don't touch anything else. Gloves, photos, you know the drill. I do now, the young voice said, a brittle joke over something that hadn't stopped shaking inside him yet. The maintenance yard stairwell door banged open below us. 2 MPs in summer-weight uniforms hustled out, faces set to serious, and a third behind them carrying a Pelican case like it contained goodwill. They looked up, saw us on the platform, then peeled toward the ladder with the kind of eagerness cops get when a case might solve itself. Sykes squared his shoulders like he was about to reclaim narrative. I'll be overseeing the evidence, he said. Chain of custody will be maintained at the division level. No, Navarro said. You don't get to. I do when your presence is potentially compromised. He gestured with his chin at the blue stripe on Sykes's arm. You'll be included. You won't be in charge. Sykes's jaw worked. He pointed at my rifle. Then she's done. Hand over the weapon. I lifted my cheek off the comb just enough to meet his eyes without losing my field. When the convoy is dust off Bravo, Major, not a second before. The world obliged us by getting ugly again before he could find a way to make it about paper. A rifle cracked from the far south tree line. A single, arrogant report that didn't care about our story. The round rattled the top rail of the furthest convoy truck and sparked like a cheap firework. The driver flinched and slewed, bit too much gas, kissed the ditch and stalled. The convoy accordioned to a stop. Doors opened where they shouldn't. A young lieutenant shouted the wrong thing. He realized it as he heard his own voice. It happens. It always has. There, Navarro said, voice tight. Far south, 1240, high in the trees, maybe a platform. I swung. The angle was bad. The heat over that distance distorted the trunks into syrup. Wind at that cut was different, less but more fickle. The shot the shooter had just sent was unnecessary from a tactical standpoint and exactly necessary from a psychological one. It was a reminder, you are not done. I wrung the scope for more field. There, a slit where leaves didn't breathe like leaves, a line that didn't belong in bark. I could almost hear his breath, because everything between us, the air, the trees, the promise of consequence, had thinned to the one question snipers ask each other without speaking. Who lies to the wind less today? Time of flight will be a full novel. He'll move. He thinks you won't shoot, Navarro said. He thinks a major will pull my bolt. Will he? I could feel Sykes's heat at my shoulder, a sun you don't want near your skin. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He radiated objection like a space heater. The part of me that still wanted to be perfect made a list of the careers that might not survive the day. I pushed it off the platform and got back to work.
I pressed. The pistol man's chest snapped backward. He folded in the expensive way bullets make bodies do when their owners thought dying would look dignified. The runner hit the tree line, but not the part that wanted him. He chose a gap where the ground dipped. I put a round into the dirt at his feet to remind him we were dating truth now. He stumbled and went to knees behind a stump the size of a confession. Alive, Navarro said, and I could hear the cost in his voice. It's always more expensive to ask for life than death in places like this. I'll buy it, I said, and I did. Hip shot. Meat, not artery. He screamed and tried to crawl and then stopped because sometimes pain is smarter than people. MP swarmed. The young one I'd liked earlier put a knee in the runner's back with a skill that said a smaller man had taught him where large men break. The CID agent moved in with cuffs and calm. The scene contracted in that odd way chaos does when adults arrive. Shouting rattles down into orders, hands know which way to point.
Sykes sat with his back to the spool, sleeve bloodied, face pale, eyes doing the arithmetic of mortality faster than he'd done any math today. He looked up at me and for the first time saw me like I was not his subordinate or his problem, but maybe the person who hadn't let him die stupid. "Thank you," he said. "It cost him. I let him pay." "Don't make me regret it," I said. The runner kept repeating a single word as they dragged him past the ladder. Not English, not German, Slavic maybe. A prayer or a curse. The syllables stuck to his teeth with blood. He saw me and smiled in a way that made me want to disinfect the air. Then he said it in my language because cruelty is bilingual. "Too late." "For what?" I asked. He nodded toward the sky. Not high, not far. Above the admin road, a haze like dust hung in a way dust doesn't when wind is this honest. "Gas," Navarro said. "Or smoke." "Convoy's gone," I said, thinking of the tunnel of trees that would hold air like a bottle. My radio crackled through the remains of the jamming, garbled, choked, a voice thin as a wire. "Bravo, station, negative, coughing, masks," then static. The runner laughed, then coughed blood into his own joke. "We need masks up now," the CID agent snapped, "and we need confirmation on what's in that air." "We're going to Bravo," Navarro said, already moving, already pulling me by momentum and intention. He looked at Sykes. "You're staying with CID. You're a witness and maybe a suspect. That's not an insult. It's a protective detail." Sykes opened his mouth to argue because that's how some men breathe. Then he looked at his sleeve, at the MP's hand on the runner's shoulder, and at the phone in a bag that had a message he didn't want his name associated with, and he nodded, the smallest bow to necessity. I slung the rifle and we ran, the world compressed into footfalls, breath, the weight of a weapon that had opinions about everything it had done today. We cut the corner of the maintenance yard, hurdled the coil of cable, slid under a half-lowered arm of a barrier I'd never seen lowered in my life. We hit the admin road, and the wind hit us back with the smell of something that had no right to be there. Acrid, synthetic, the ghost of sweet you get when bad chemistry pretends to be fruit. "On," Navarro said, snapping his own mask out of a pouch I hadn't clocked because his vest is a forest of skills. He tossed me his spare without looking. I cinched it and tasted rubber and old fear. The haze thinned as we moved, not a persistent cloud, a smear in a corridor. Enough to panic, not enough to kill if you kept your head. Ahead, a soldier stumbled out of the tree tunnel, eyes red, hands out, gasping. We grabbed him under the arms and walked him to the shoulder where wind had space to be honest again. He shook and cried and laughed at once, the way humans do when they don't know whether to thank air or fear it. "What is it?" I asked. He shook his head. "It smells like pears," he said, then gagged. "Not CS, not CN. Something cheap." "Non-lethal disruption," Navarro said. "To slow response. Make the story bigger than the shots." "Make us question the air," I said. "They want us paranoid." A siren moaned from deeper down the road, German ambulance, then another, local police. The world had noticed our small war. We moved to Bravo. The safe site was a gravel turnaround with a shade tarp and 2 water buffaloes and a table someone had imagined would hold sandwiches and a clipboard in a nicer universe. The general's vehicle sat there, doors open, 2 medics working on a young private on the tailgate with the efficiency of people who know which veins to find without looking. The general sat on a cooler with his mask perched on his head like a poorly chosen hat. He saw me and stood. "You were my sky," he said to Navarro, then to me, "and your sky." I shook my head. "Just your math. The sky did the heavy lifting." He laughed once, a sound with edges. "Who tried to own your rifle?" "Sir," Navarro began, warning baked into respect. CID arrived in a soft suspension SUV that made the maintenance yard look poorer than it already felt. 2 agents got out with faces that had learned to be polite to grief and rude to lies. They took custody like a choreography. Photos, signatures,
a sealed evidence bag married to 2 sets of initials. The taller one, a woman with a silver streak in her bun and eyes that saw farther than mine did, listened to the quick version and then looked at me for a long breath. "You were cut from the schoolhouse," she said. "Not a question. Happens. Less than it should. Thanks for staying a student." I didn't trust my tongue, so I nodded. She smiled with the corner of her mouth that had seen less sunlight than the other. "General is at Bravo," the radio announced, relief like a contagion. "Minimal injuries. We're moving him out of the box." Sykes seized the microphone like it had been calling his name specifically. "Division staff to all stations," he said, voice rich with the sound of men who author summaries. "Stand by for sitrap. We will be convening an immediate hot wash at—" The radio chose that moment to spit a new noise into our day. Not a crack, a shriek, electronic, ferro, the kind of sound a modem made when I was a kid and my neighbor's internet tried to eat itself. It bled into the net, sharp enough to make me wince. "Jamming," the CID agent said softly. "Someone's about to do something they don't want on record." "Eyes," Navarro said, already turning, already becoming the animal that lives under all our uniforms. I climbed the ladder to the platform again, because high is honest when things go strange. Sykes shouted a question about authority up the rungs. I let gravity answer him. From the platform, the training area had changed, not in the way grass and light do, in the way intention has weight. A white van I hadn't registered before sat at the edge of the maintenance yard. Too clean, too still. Its rear doors were shut and its front wheels were turned hard left like it had been parked by a person who loved straight lines and had failed. I hadn't seen it arrive. It had been there since morning, probably. Sometimes my eye betrays me by ignoring the ordinary things that later become plot. The van's brake lights flashed once, like a wink. "Kaya?" Navarro called. "White van, edge of yard, near the fence line. It just blinked." "It's been there all day," Sykes called dismissively from below. "Does it?" the CID agent asked in that gentle way that can end careers. As if it had been waiting for a cue, the van's rear doors swung open. Not fast, with a carefulness that felt more like theater than haste. Inside, a shape. Not a person, a frame, a tripod mounted to the van's floor with a gimbal that would make a film student weep. On the gimbal, a tube that made every hair on my arms try to leave my body. Not an RPG, the wrong girth, the wrong bones. A home brew maybe, a launcher someone told themselves was for fireworks until they put teeth on it. "Kaya?" Navarro called. He didn't need to say anything else. My rifle was in Sykes's hands. He saw it at the same instant I did. The price of being right earlier was about to come due in a currency I couldn't cash without him. He looked up at me, then at the van, then back at me. 1,000 words fought in his mouth. I watched him make the one decision that might make me forgive him in a world where forgiveness is rare. He threw the rifle up to me. I caught it, not with drama, with every callus I'd earned. It settled into my shoulder like it had never left. The wind at the yard was a petty friend. The van's interior was a windless world, cruelly steady. The launcher pointed not at the general, not at the convoy. Those were gone. It pointed at the roof where the CID agent stood, at the platform where we were, at the place the person behind the plan had realized their mistake. Sat. Me. "Get down," I said, voice dropping into that register the body recognizes as old truth. "Everyone, now." Navarro didn't ask. He pulled the CID agent by the belt and shoulder so hard her boots squeaked. Sykes did something smart with his spine. He flattened it. The MPs dove behind the stairwell. The young private hugged the ladder like it could love him back. The launcher coughed fire. The world took a breath and held it. The projectile arced like it was thinking about hope. It wasn't a rocket. It was a grenade lobbed from a curated slingshot. The arc was shallow enough to be intercepted by math and mean enough to make mistakes fatal. I didn't dial. There wasn't time. There was only hold and a thin slice of air my bullet had to rent in the second before the grenade found purchase. Wind negligible.
Aim point a meter in front of the grenade's path, because a bullet that meets a moving thing has to lead, and because the world insists you not only be right, but on time. I pressed. The round left and I was already pressing again because I didn't believe in certainty anymore, and because the grenade had no right to be in my sky. The first bullet clipped the grenade's trailing fins. It wobbled like a drunk thought. The second hit the body. It popped like a wine cork from a bad movie and bloomed into smoke and shrapnel that made the air taste like pennies. The blast wave hit the platform a heartbeat later, a slap that said, "You are small, remember. You are alive, remember better." Shards pattered on the deck and sang off the rail. One cut my cheekbone with the neatness of a razor. Warmth slid under my ear and down the collar of my shirt. I blinked hard to keep both eyes and the world in their places. "Everyone okay?" Navarro called, letting his voice be the rope that pulls men out of holes. "Fine," the CID agent hissed. Then, "You good?" to her partner. "Affirmative." MPs, shaken yeses. Sykes, a grunt that held less fury than 5 minutes ago and more respect than he'd shown his barber. The van's driver, who had thought he would aim and shoot and leave in a single sentence, panicked. He leaned into the front seat, lost seconds with keys and mistakes, then slammed the van into reverse without looking. He hit the fence at an angle that made the van choose comedy instead of escape. Wire caught on the bumper and held with the stubbornness of old metal. The wheels spun, the van rocked. The driver hammered the gear shift into drive, back to reverse, the kind of stupidity that writes its own obituary. "Do you want him alive?" I asked Navarro. My voice felt far away and close, both. "If you can gift wrap him," he said. I broke the van's left front tire. The 300 made it an act of mercy. Rubber exploded into a flayed mouth. The rim chewed fence. The van lurched and gave up on motion. The driver saw a new truth and chose a different bad one. He bolted from the passenger door and ran, toward the tree line, toward a shape I hadn't seen, because it hadn't wanted to be seen. Another man. He stood up from behind a roll of cable with a pistol and a look on his face that said he'd achieved very little in his life except this moment, which would be enough for him if he died doing it. He tracked not me, not Navarro, Sykes. Training does strange math for you. You prioritize targets by consequence and distance and the curve of luck. If Sykes goes down, we lose a witness and gain a martyr. If the runner gets away, we lose a thread our hands are barely around. My reticle chose the pistol man. My second thought chose the runner. I felt both choices like a burn. The pistol spat. Sykes flinched, stumbled, and then exploded into motion that owed more to fear than to plan. The round took his sleeve and some of the shape under it, but not the meat. He dove behind a spool and did not try to look brave doing it. Good. There's hope for a man who can abandon posture.
"I saw a blue stripe," the general said. "I also saw a drone die like a coward. We can talk about both when I'm not full of sand. For now, thank you." He turned to his aide. "Find out who she is, then tell my wife I'm not late for dinner. I had a math problem." We stayed until the ambulance loaded the coughing, and the local police did the dance of jurisdiction with people who had different accents and the same uniforms. The jamming lifted like guilt. Radios breathed again. The world pretended it was a range day we'd tell stories about later, like we liked the ending. Back at the yard, CID had the runner in cuffs and in a cruiser. The evidence bags were numbered and double-signed. Sykes had a pressure bandage on his arm and a face that had recalculated some loyalties. He watched me the way you watch a storm receding, carefully, as if it might change its mind. He stepped forward as we approached. "I need to speak with you, Specialist Elsner," he said. It sounded as if the words might have thorns. "No," Navarro said, standing where between is a noun you can be. "Not without CID present." "Fine," Sykes said. He looked at the CID agent. "I need to offer a statement regarding pre-incident directives and the possible compromise of division channels." He swallowed. I watched his throat work like he was admitting to a smaller sin to hide a larger one. Or maybe the reverse. People are complicated. "Let's sit," the CID agent said, "and let's record." We found a slab of shade against the maintenance building.
The day had decided to remember it was spring. A light breeze lifted the corner of the tarp over the table and made a small sound like a page turning. Sykes began. There was an anonymous directive, he said. Came through a back-channel server labeled with a routine maintenance tag, which is why it was missed by some filters. It advised that during today's exercise, due to deconfliction with host nation demonstrations nearby, no live fire was to be engaged without division clearance. It was signed with a code we use for real-world interdiction events. He rubbed his temple. I enforced it because I believed it was real. He looked at me. When you fired, I believed you were about to create an international incident. He looked at Navarro. And then you killed a man on a roof who was aiming at my general. He spread his hands in a small gesture of surrender. I was wrong. The CID agent clicked her pen, a small amnesty. This back channel, where does it live? She said. In an enclave server in Vicenza, Sykes said, or it pretends to. He gestured to the bagged phone. We might not have a leak. We might have a fiction that knows our passwords. Blue gets the last word, I said, tasting the phrase again like it might turn into a different flavor if I chewed it long enough. Blue like division, blue like police, blue like NATO, or blue like sorrow. Or blue like the color we paint training weapons, Navarro added, almost to himself. A shadow fell across us, tall and familiar. The general had walked up quietly, as men who have learned to survive do. He changed his shirt and lost the dust. His eyes were the same. He listened to Sykes repeat his confession in a cleaner paragraph, then took a breath you could hear. I need to know if someone in my house invited a ghost, or if a ghost dressed in my house's clothes and walked in the front door while we were arguing about lunch. He looked at me. I also need to know your name again because my aide wrote it down and then lost the paper. Kaya Elsner, I said. It sounded less like a joke than it had at dawn. He nodded. You will be part of this investigation, Specialist Elsner, he said. Officially. Sykes stiffened. Sir, she's enlisted. She has eyes I now trust more than anyone else's on this installation, the general said mildly. I don't care what her pay grade is. I care what her wind calls are. He turned to Navarro. And you? You've been hiding talent behind a lockbox key. I've been watching a student do her homework, Navarro said. He didn't smile. You don't want a day like this is still settling its debts. The general's phone hummed. He glanced at it, and his face did a small thing people do when a tiny new disaster arrives dressed as a text. He showed the screen to CID, a photo, grainy, zoomed in from a long lens or a cheap camera. The platform, me behind the rifle, Sykes reaching for the bolt. The caption, she doesn't follow orders. Sent from an unknown number, the general said softly, to my personal phone. He looked up at me. They're not done. I knew it before he said it. The wind had gone from playful to thoughtful again. It skated across the top of the tarp in a way that said more math was coming. The CID agent's radio crackled with an officer's voice from the perimeter. We've got a civilian vehicle trying to enter at Gate 3, he said. Driver says he's press, no credentials. He has a drone case in the back seat. Navarro and I looked at each other. Let him through carefully, the CID agent said into her mic, and don't let his hands near any zippers. She turned to us. They want eyes on this. They want to own the story. They want to own me, I said, feeling the weight of the general's phone's caption, or ruin me, whichever is more fun. The general tucked his phone away like a man putting a snake in a pocket. We'll handle optics later, he said. For now, Gate 3. We stood. The day had lengthened without asking our permission. Shadows from the maintenance bay roof stretched like fingers reaching for something they'd decided to take. My cheeks stung where shrapnel had written its small signature. The wind moved a paper cup across gravel, and I watched it like it might tell me a story. On the way to the gate, a private jogged up breathless. Specialist Elsner, he panted. We found this under the maintenance office door, like taped to it. Paper, old school. He handed me a sheet, torn from a yellow legal pad.
Blue ink, block letters. Stop lying to the wind. I looked at Navarro. He looked at me. We both looked at the world beyond the fence, where trees were just trees and also not. Then the radio on my shoulder made a noise that froze my blood, not because it was loud, but because it was quiet. A click. Then another. Then a voice that spoke with no accent, and all of them. Kaya. My name. In my ear. Let's see if you can do this when it counts. The voice paused. Check your 3 o'clock. I turned not fast. The feeling you get when a scope you don't own is on your skin is not paranoia, it's knowledge. A shimmer on the far berm at the edge of a stand of low scrub. Not a person, not a rifle. A lens, a camera, or a scope. The difference was about to matter in a way that would change the color of the day. I brought the rifle up without thinking about how ugly that looked in a world with cameras. The general didn't flinch. Navarro didn't breathe. Sykes said my name like he wanted to learn how to pronounce regret. I found the shimmer. The reticle settled. The voice in my radio whispered, softer now, almost kind. Don't miss. I pressed. The trigger broke like a promise finally kept, and the world, which had been pretending to be manageable, decided to show me what the word last really meant.
Really meant. The lens bloomed into glitter and fell out of my scope like a constellation dying. The shot felt perfect until the world told me it wasn't a target. It was a tripwire with a heartbeat. The instant the glass went, a buried modem somewhere nearby screamed into life, and the net in my ear spat, static slashed with a woman's laugh. Not hearty, not pleased, the kind of laugh someone practices into a mirror until it scares them less. Good, the voice said. Now we can start. The berm coughed dust, 3 meters left of the ruined lens. A second shimmer slid into being. Low, lateral, same size. Placed not where I would aim, but where my brain would go after I missed. I felt the push of the tactic. Break the optical, provoke the more aggressive shot, waste the second, then shoot the shooter when she's committed. But the wind didn't agree with the plan. It freshened from our 9, tugging my sling with that familiar stubbornness. Mirage slicked right to left in honest sheets. Whatever this game was, it had to play by physics's rules. 2 decoys, I said. Someone wants to herd me. Someone thinks you'll chase cardboard, Navarro answered, voice tight. Sykes said nothing. The kind of silence men keep when they've seen enough to know their voices aren't needed. I ignored the second shimmer. I looked for the breath of what placed it, the barest offset in heat where a hand had been, a darker seam and scrub like a belly had pressed dirt. There, a scuff leading into a wedge of low broom and sandy soil, angling for a shallow depression that would let a shooter scoot without breaking silhouette. 3 o'clock plus 60 meters, I murmured. Depression behind the scrub. He's moved low. Angle on us is shallow. He'll be trying for the base of the platform. Navarro didn't ask me how I knew. He lifted his binos to the wrong place on purpose and muttered something obvious, a tiny act of theater to keep the real line of sight private. The voice in my radio sighed like she'd been hoping I'd be easier. You don't want to play? I don't like board games, I said, loud enough for anyone pretending not to listen to hear anyway. Too many rules for people who cheat with feelings. She laughed again, and the laugh was closer, not in space, on a channel nearer to ours, as if she'd stepped into the hall outside our door. Whoever you are, Navarro said, you have about 4 seconds left to be funny. Less, I said, and squeezed. The round stitched dust a body length behind the depression's lip. A figure jerked, corrected, too quick, too certain, then made the choice of cowards with training. Sprint. He broke from cover into a low run that would have fooled me at a lesser distance. We weren't lesser. The second round took his calf. His knee folded sideways and the rest of him arrived late to the ground. He dragged himself 2 meters and then learned patience from pain. Alive, Navarro said. Default setting engaged. On it. Hip, meet, break the crawl. It's a cruel calculus to preserve a living witness. He made a shape on the dirt that the wind lifted and smudged until he looked like a sketch someone had started and then decided not to finish. His radio chattered once, a short code I didn't recognize, and died like he'd crushed it against a stone. "Who are you?" I asked into my mic. "If you want a conversation, use your mouth, not other men's bones." The voice in my ear fell briefly in love with silence. When it spoke, it was softer. "I know your name. Kaya. Such a good name for wind. I thought you'd like the lens trick. I used something like it in Helmand. Your people missed, mine didn't." "I'm not your memory," I said. "You're not mine." "Oh, but you are," she said. "We're both apprenticed to gravity." Gate 3 called on the net with German politeness forced into English corners. "We have the journalist now. He is unusual. He insists we film at once. Your CID says wait. He says freedom of press. He has a drone license. He has a lot of batteries." "Hold him," CID replied. "No filming, no flying. We'll bring your paperwork for saying no. We'll bring our rifles for saying please," I added under my breath. Navarro touched my elbow. "We're done here." "We are for now," I said, eyes still in glass. The berm had quieted. The decoys were just glass now, not invitations. The sand held the story of hands and knees and a short, hard run. But the author wasn't writing more. We moved with purpose toward Gate 3. The wind came with us, because wind is loyal to land, not men. The maintenance yard receded into the gray-green of ordinary. The runner we'd hobbled shivered under an MP's knee and counted some god in a language that made the young cop look at the ground. "Don't lie to the wind," the note said. The words ticked in my pocket like a second heartbeat. At Gate 3, the fence cut the world into base and not base, with the insistence of lines on maps. A white sedan idled at the checkpoint, trunk gaping, camera case open on the rear seat like a beggar's bowl. The driver had the kind of beard that confuses men into calling other men brother. He wore a press lanyard printed on a home office, the way lies get dressed for church. "Sir," the gate NCO said to Navarro, relief lifting his vowels, "this is the journalist." He made the title do hard labor while the man fidgeted with his phone as if it were a talisman against consequence. "I have the right to document," he said. His English was good, with islands of Germany between his consonants. "There has been an incident. People will be asking. If you conceal—" "Nobody's concealing," Navarro said evenly. "We're sequencing. What outlet are you with?" "Independent," he said, with pride of those who have never had an editor tell them the difference between truth and an interesting lie. "You fly drones for your channel," she said. "Where are your host nation permits?" He smiled, and it didn't reach any part of him that could be prosecuted. "It is public land there," he pointed, as if the white line on the road meant anything to a quadcopter. "I do not need—" "You do," she said. "And today, you need more than that. Nobody flies until my office says so." He shrank a little, then grew in a different direction. "Then I will film from here," he said, and turned and raised his phone towards me like a pilgrim toward an icon. "You are the woman from the platform," he said in German so good I wondered which school had taught him to treat verbs like glass. "Cameras," I said, to no one and everyone. "I told you they'd own this story if we let them." "Put the phone down," Navarro said to the man, just a little more officer than NCO in his tone, because sometimes the line saves time. The journalist shrugged and lowered his arm. "Blue gets the last word," he said in English, as if it were a song lyric he'd been paid to hum. I stepped closer. "Where did you hear that?" He blinked. "It is on your social, no? The photo, the caption."
He held out his phone like an offering and showed me my own body behind the rifle, Sykes's hand on the bolt, the range backdrop like a theater curtain, and the words floating under it on an account that looked like mine until you looked like me. She doesn't follow orders. Hashtag Blue gets the last word, hashtag Sabre Junction, hashtag USA Europe. The follower count under the fake handle was a lie you could measure by the thousands. They had this prepared before your shot, Navarro said. They had all of this prepared before my life. The journalist's thumb hovered over the drone case latch. The gate NCO twitched, not at the thumb, at the pressure I could feel building in the scene like a storm you smell before you see the sky turn. The CID agent moved her weight subtly, heels to balls of her feet. Sykes, bandage on arm, arrived with 2 division staffers who wore expressions like they'd come to confiscate a party. "Sir," the gate NCO called to Sykes, and this time the title did exactly what the NCO wanted, move potential from one body to another. "Permission to deny entry." "Denied," the journalist snapped before Sykes could open his mouth. He smiled again, wider and worse. "Blue says let me in." Something about the sentence made my teeth itch. Not the words, the cadence. The voice in my radio had said something like it and made it sound like a hymn. "Who is Blue?" I asked him. He shrugged. "You are the Army. You tell me." Sykes stepped closer, choosing the absolute wrong time to remember he had authority. "On what do you think you'll be reporting?" He tapped his screen. A live stream countdown spun. 10, 9, 8. "Stop him," the CID agent said flatly.
The gate NCO moved. The journalist moved faster, in the way people do when they've arranged the world for speed. His hand flicked the latch on the case, and his other thumb danced across his phone screen. The drone's arm sprang out with the mechanical joy of a dog released from a car. It lifted on a breath of rotors. I put a 300 round through its battery at a range so rude every person at the gate forgot how to swallow for a full second. It came apart with the hurt surprise of engineered things betrayed by a sharp piece of metal. The journalist went very still, then much louder. "You assault press," he shouted in 2 languages and 3 ethics textbooks. Sykes shocked me by doing something useful. He put a hand on the man's shoulder and squeezed in a way that would hold in court. "You attempted to fly a drone into an active incident," he said, voice like a manual. "You will stop speaking until you can be wise." The journalist went quiet in the fragile way people do when other parts of the plan have just failed. His eyes flicked to the trunk, not the camera case, a second case under an emergency kit. He didn't look nervous. He looked resigned. That was the only hint we got. The case under the kit had a small light on its side I would have sworn wasn't there a breath ago. It went from red to green. "Back!" I barked, and the gate NCO reacted like a trampoline under a bowling ball, throwing himself between the sedan and the smallest privates, shoving them toward the interior lane. The case didn't explode. It did something more clever and in some ways worse. It breathed. A white fog spilled from a set of ports, hugging the trunk, then sliding down to the pavement like mist deciding to be concrete. The wind took it and made it a ribbon across the lane. "Masks!" Navarro shouted, pulling his like a magician from a sleeve. The CID agent threw me hers without looking. The journalist inhaled, then gagged, then laughed in a way he hadn't practiced. "It's not lethal," he said, between coughs, and the sentence wanted to be comforting and failed. "It's only to taste." He wasn't wrong. My tongue went numb, my eyes spilled tears that weren't grief. The fog smelled like someone had murdered a pair and used the body to cover a chemical crime. Soldiers stumbled, masked, cursing, adjusting straps with fingers that suddenly seemed thick. The voice in my radio sighed again, disembodied and close. "You're slow when it's not math, Kaya." I said, "Come explain it to me. Use your throat." "Soon," she said. "First, I have to teach your Blue that orders are stories."
Blue is dead, Sykes snapped. Blue is a color, not a person. You still believe that, she cooed. You have a lot of faith for a man who almost watched his arm die. Who are you? Sykes asked the air, and I couldn't help it. I laughed. He glared at me as if I'd broken his favorite theory. Gates secure, the CID agent said, as the fog thinned to a ribbon the wind could lift over the grass. No injuries, no flight. We'll impound the vehicle. Bring the case inside, Sykes said. Leave it, I sharply said. Air it out here. It's an attention machine. If there's a second stage in that case, it's made for a hallway, not a field. Navarro nodded at the CID agent, and she gave the smallest tilt of her head that said, "Good catch," and, "Also, I would have told them if you hadn't." We held the line and let the air do our work. The journalist's bravado drained in parallel with the fog. He sagged, then straightened, then sagged again. A man who wanted to be famous and had settled for essential. "Who paid you?" I asked. He went defiant, then uncertain, then practical. "A woman," he said. "She called herself Blau, Blue." He lifted his chin. "If you are who you say, you know that color is not always yours." "She told you to use that caption?" "She gave me a packet. Photos, words, accounts," he shrugged. "Money." He looked at me. "She said you would not shoot the drone. She said you wanted to be seen." Sykes stared at the pavement. He had enough self-awareness to look embarrassed on my behalf and his. The gate NCO radioed for a hazmat test kit. A specialist jogged up with a case and started waving wands like they might sing the right notes. The reading came back with a lot of syllables and not a lot of panic. "Glycol-based with lacrimators," the specialist said. "Nothing persistent, nothing that'll land us on the news with fatalities. A show." "Everything is a show," the voice in my radio whispered. "You should know that. Today you're trending." I closed my eyes for a heartbeat and saw the photo again. The hand on the bolt, the words under my face. I tasted metal and a little of my own blood from the cheek cut that had dried into a thin line of chalk. "We need to move the narrative indoors, literally and figuratively." She flicked her eyes toward Sykes. "That means division makes a statement before the wrong statement makes itself."
Sykes nodded, like he'd had that thought in a drawer and was relieved to take it out. "I can—" "Not you," she said, not unkind. "You're a subject in this, at least for today. It needs to be the general." "Find me a room with a flag and a microphone," the general said from behind us, making all of us jump. He'd moved quieter than any of his rank had a right to. "And find me a copy of everything that's already been said about us." He looked at me. "And you, Specialist Elsner, if you're willing to stand behind me, do. If you'd rather stand beside CID, do that. But don't stand in front of a camera." "Copy," I said. The word felt good in my mouth. We backtracked toward the maintenance office where someone had already turned a break room into a command post. Cables braided across the floor like small rivers. Laptops breathed heat. Radios whispered to themselves. A chaplain poured coffee he didn't need to and made it his business to remember everyone's name, including mine, even though he'd never met me. The general stood at a cheap podium, with a flag behind him that had seen a lot of air and exactly the right amount of war. He spoke plainly. He did not lie. He did not give the enemy his name. He said words like exercise and incident and ongoing investigation, and he said them with a mouth that had tasted dirt an hour ago. It landed. He didn't mention me. Good. The press release that went out on division letterhead half an hour later did not mention me either. Better. I hovered at the edge of the room with Navarro and the CID agent while Sykes sat with his hands folded and learned to look useful from a chair. A private I recognized from the range earlier approached with a tablet that had become a television, trying on a phone's coat. "Ma'am," he said, awkward with the title and me. Your account, the fake, it just posted again." He showed me. A video this time. Grainy, handheld, someone filming a screen that was filming us. Me on the platform, the drone, the grenade. The caption,
She thinks she's above the law. The hashtags multiplied like bacteria, linking to channels that only existed today. Accounts with names like Wind Truth and K. Elsner Archive and Blue Last. Whoever she is, she has a content team, the CID agent said. She has an army, Navarro said. The only kind you can raise in an afternoon. The room's radios chirped together like birds at dawn. A perimeter unit called something we all leaned forward to hear. Possible secondary at the water tower near the rail line. We've got a case taped under the ladder cage. No obvious trigger, white with a blue stripe. Blue. We moved. The water tower stood like all water towers stand, an apology to the sky for needing metal to be tall. The ladder cage made a lean line of rust up its belly. The case was obvious when you were told to see it, and invisible before. A strip of blue tape around its middle did what colors do, told a story that might have been true once, and meant to be this time because humans remember colors like they were old friends. Back everyone away to 100 meters, the CID agent ordered. EOD will love this. EOD is en route, 10 mics. The voice in my ear was already there. You can't cut every wire, Kaya. Sometimes you have to decide which ones to let sing. What do you want? I asked, hands at my sides, tongue thick with dust and bureaucracy. To be seen, she said simply. To make you look up from your numbers and taste what orders taste like when they curdle? You're going to hurt people who didn't write them. Silence again. Then, you think orders write themselves? We waited for EOD in a ring of caution tape and shared vigilance. The wind slid along the tower's skin and made the tape whisper. I watched the ladder cage. I watched the case like it might teach me a word I would need later. Sykes stood with us, his bandage peeking out of his sleeve, his mouth set like he was clenching an invisible pen. You should be in medical, Navarro told him. I should be in a lot of places. I'm here. The EOD truck arrived with the humility of people whose work is quieter than its reputation until it isn't. A tech in the suit went up the ladder with the slowness that keeps fathers from folding and mothers from burying more than they should. He put a mirror on a stick under the case and peered like a bird into a silver puddle. Non-electrical, he called down. Barometric with a tilt and a SIM card? That's not standard. Someone built this at home with rage and a credit card. Can you disarm? CID asked. Yes, the tech said. And then, like all honest professionals, added, probably. The crowd breathed together and I hated the togetherness. I wanted us to breathe separately so if the air turned against us, we wouldn't be so sad in chorus. The tech reached out. He made a small adjustment that looked like prayer. The case clicked. Every rifle came up at the same moment because humans are old animals who know what a click means. The case did not explode. It chirped. A tiny modem woke and pinged a tower with the insistence of a child tugging a sleeve. The tech froze and swore with a tenderness I expected from him now. What is it? Navarro called. It's sending, the tech said. Not detonating. Posting. It's a transmitter, probably video. Blue gets the last word. The phrase dropped into the gravel and rolled toward me like a coin. Kill it, the CID agent said. On it, the tech said, and pulled a cable with the intimacy of a surgeon. The modem died. The tower did not explode. The day did not end in fire. The crowd's together breath came out as laughter that hadn't asked permission. My radio clicked, once, then twice. Then the voice, closer now, intimate and uninvited. You read the wind. Do you read people? Every day. I'm reading you now.
Then read this, she said. You're standing on my stage and you haven't looked at the floor. Navarro's hand closed on my shoulder with the pressure that means don't move. Kaya, he said quietly, don't shift your left foot. The EOD tech turned, slow, deliberate. He stepped down 2 rungs and looked along the ground with eyes that had learned to see against their will. He crouched by my boot and brushed aside a scatter of gravel. Under my left heel, flush with the packed earth, a silver coin of metal looked back. Pressure, he said, voice suddenly the size of a whisper. Wide plate, low spring. She stepped you onto it with her words. My mouth went dry. My skin felt like wind wanted to leave it. How forgiving is it? Navarro asked, every muscle in him renegotiating loyalty with gravity. Not very, the tech said. It's generous on weight once applied. She could roll her foot a little, but not lift or shift. It's impatient about beginnings. He looked up at me. What's your name? Kaya, I said, and it felt like a small defiance to say it while a stupid circle of metal decided whether I would still be named a minute from now. Hi, Kaya, he said, voice changing from tech to human. I'm Amir. We're going to make the world small. Just you and me and this disc. Everyone else? Back, Navarro said. 50 meters, now. Sykes didn't argue. CID didn't either. The crowd peeled away with that reluctant backwardness animals use when they know their leaving is kindness and their staying would be theft. The general, who had arrived without me noticing because the day had stopped asking my permission, stood at the edge of the new circle and did not blink. He had become a student of this stage, too. The voice in my radio purred. See, now you're listening. I made my voice very small and very mean. If your endgame is to turn me into a hashtag, you lack ambition. I don't want you dead. I want you filmed. But I'll take what the day gives me. We're going to give her nothing, Amir said to me, as if we had already agreed. He slid a thin aluminum plate under my heel, the kind that makes a floor where a floor isn't. He worked fast and gently and with the kind of attention I've only ever seen in people who do things that break hearts when they go wrong. He wedged thin shims on either side of the plate like tucking a child in. He glanced at a small level like a spirit was trapped under its bubble and needed to be convinced to choose life. You're going to roll your weight onto your right foot, slowly, like you're apologizing to choices. I'll keep the left plate honest. I breathed. In, out. Long. The wind shifted, and I felt loyal to it, not for playing jokes now. Go, Amir said. I moved weight, less than I thought was possible. A 1/4 ounce, then another. My right foot bit into gravel. My left heel lifted a whisper. The plate did not cry. The silver disc did not accuse. Half, Amir said. Pause. He slid a wedge under the plate with a movement so smooth I wondered if he had sculpted wind before this. 3/4, he said. Pause. He set another wedge. All, he said. I moved. My left heel left the disc. Amir's hand replaced it with a pressure I could feel in my bones. The disc did not mind. It had learned another love. Amir smiled with half his face, the part that still believed in mornings. You're free, he said. The world resumed its size, and I hated it for trying to be that big again. Navarro let breath out very slowly. He didn't touch me because sometimes not touching is the respect that keeps people from breaking. My radio clicked. The voice was closer, and for the first time, it trembled. Not fear. Not regret. A thin strand of admiration pulled taut. You don't lie to the wind, she said. I'll give you that. Come see if I lie to you, I said. Soon, she said again, and this time soon sounded like a promise she was afraid to keep.
Amir lifted the disc as if it were a polite animal we were relocating. The underside had a simple switch and a coin cell, cruel in its thrift. The device was wedged into a shallow hole with chewing gum because some criminals do not respect craft the way I want them to. Sykes crouched and looked. We train for IEDs and get this. There was a tiredness in his voice that had hugged him in the past hour and wouldn't let go. The CID agent straightened, eyes on the horizon. She's going to escalate. Today wasn't to kill a general, it was to spin us, to make us stumble on camera, to make someone like Kaya into a symbol she can aim at later. Make blue into a slogan, Sykes said bleakly. Make division into a color. Make the wind into a liar, I said. That's what she hates me for. The general's aide trotted up, phone out, face guarded. Sir, he said to the general, there's a call for Specialist Elsner on the secure line. He looked at me with the kind of curiosity I've seen medics wear looking at scars. She asked for you by name. My stomach did the sensible thing and tried to leave. Who? I asked, though I knew. The aide swallowed. She wouldn't give a name, he said. She said you'd know her by her weather. Navarro and I looked at each other, and I saw a door swing open behind his eyes that led to a room labeled Very Old, Very Tired Truths. Take it in there, the CID agent said, pointing to a utility shed someone had given an office chair to that morning. Speaker on, everyone shut up while she plays. I went in. The room was cool in the way buildings get cool when their walls are concrete and their windows have nails where curtains should be. The phone on the table had more buttons than sense.
Changed. The bullet had already bought its ticket. The gust that leaned across the platform in the split second after my press wasn't the wind I'd read. It was its cousin, late and mean. Trace told the story before the sound reached me. Arc, drift, the smallest flirt to the right. At 902 meters, a hair is a haircut. I held into it, not with dials, with bones. The round touched down a palm width farther right than I had ordered, which would have been a miss if the runner hadn't done the thing ego makes you do when the world seems to turn and look at you. He squared to the light. Impact was ugly music. His right shoulder popped back. He folded like a hinge and hit dirt, rolling toward the drainage ditch with the animal desire to be lower than danger. I felt the click of my brain moving into the place it goes when a problem stops being moral and becomes mechanical. Hit, I said. Right shoulder, through and through, possible clavicle. He's mobile. Finish him, Navarro said. Not vicious, not kind, true. I rode recoil like a wave, tracked the flinch and the roll. He clawed for the ditch, and I saw where he tried to disappear. I held 9 mils again, less wind, 1.6, because the gust had spent itself and the pines had gone back to nodding like old men at a long story. He put his head up to choose his next move. I took the choice away. Second round. In. The skull's quiet break. The body went still in that particular way you never mistake for a decision to play possum. Roof, Navarro asked, already sliding in his binos. Silent. Vent cough dust. No follow-up glint. Overwatch, this is Convoy 6. We're static at the dip. 2 flats, 1 engine out. Small arms fire ceased. Assessing casualties. Who took those shots? Navarro thumb transmit. Range Overwatch. This net is unsafe for full answer. Short version, friendly. Stay put, build your wall, watch the trees east. We see 1 runner down, 1 probable on roof, neutralized. Copy. Came back. Taut as wire. Will hold. I scanned with the glass wide, not chasing ghosts, looking for the things that didn't act like the day they were in. The admin road shimmered with heat and panic. The convoy had done the smart thing. Door shields, angles, rifles finding sectors like they've been practicing for a year for this minute. The general stayed low, profile small, a set of eyes behind sunglasses, revealed and hidden behind door metal, his detail painting arcs into the green. On the maintenance yard roof, the wrong shadow didn't move. Dust settled like indecision. The corrugated metal held its breath.
Beside me, Major Sykes was breathing hard, not from effort, from outrage. Paper outranks, oxygen outruns. He was a man used to being the ending of things. I felt him coiling words for me. "Say it," I said, not taking my eye from the scope. "You disobeyed a direct order, twice." "I obeyed physics," I said, still watching the tree line. "You'll like the after-action report." "I'll like your weapon impounded," he shot back, "and your stripes." "I don't have stripes," I said mildly, "just a name." Navarro's hand landed on the back of my triceps, warm and anchoring, a human sandbag. "To Sykes, you'll like that my recorder has been running since you tackled my shooter," he said quietly. "Chain of custody, Major. It's as boring as it sounds unless a general dies." A crack from below, rifle not ours, yanked the line of my attention rightward. I snapped to a sliver of movement 300 meters farther north than the first runner. A shape kneeling behind a tangle of windfall, smart enough to pick the gray-on-gray parts of the world. The barrel of his rifle wore a suppressor like a promise. He was aiming not at the convoy now, but at the soldiers breaking toward the maintenance yard. "Second shooter in the down timber, north of the ditch. Range 1035 by rough, standby for clean." "Rangefinder," Navarro said. The unit chirped. 1028 to the log, call it 30 to the shoulder." "Copy." I didn't dial. Time is a currency you spend or hoard. Today's exchange rate was brutal. The mirage there was thinner, the heat less honest because the ground had been shaded for hours before. Wind at that slice read 8 to 10 left to right. I held 9.3 down for the drop and almost 2 for wind. Then I waited, which felt like sin and was actually the only prayer that ever matters in my work, the one where you ask the world to be briefly consistent. He rose a centimeter to adjust his sight, his shoulder, then his cheek. Ego again, the need to see more than you should. I pressed. The world accepted. He went back in a way a person doesn't choose. The suppressor kissed dirt. The log shivered like a thing that had just remembered gravity could be cruel. "Shooter 2 neutralized," I said. "I need confirmation on roof before we call this phase done." On the way came a new voice on the net, higher, young, controlled. "Ridgeback 2 on ladder. You got my back?" "You already had it." "Roof is quiet but disrespectful. Assume 1. Watch the vent for heat shimmer." "Copy," he said, and it warmed a part of me that had forgotten what it was like to be trusted by a voice you can't see. Sykes snorted. "Are you going to start issuing commands on division nets now?" "I'm going to keep people breathing," I said. "If that bothers you, file your feelings." He stepped closer. "That's enough." Navarro moved between us without looking like he moved at all. "Major," he said, "and I have never heard a man put so much velvet around steel. Step back, or I will put you back." Silence grew teeth for 3 seconds. Sykes did the kind of calculus that includes careers and headlines. He stepped back. Only a little. "Ridgeback 2 on roof," the radio reported. "We've got 1 down by vent, 1 rifle, looks like a custom build, suppressor hot. He's expired. No movement else. Securing." "Copy," Navarro said. "Roof is yours. Maintain eyes north and east. We're engaging further out." A shiver ran through me that had nothing to do with wind or elevation. The space inside my ribs where failure had lived since Georgia felt less occupied. "You were wrong about me," Navarro said softly, as if he'd been saving the sentence for a decade. "You weren't an almost. You were early." I didn't say anything. I had a general to keep unshot. "Convoy 6, the radio called. "We show roof secured. 1 shooter down north of ditch. Overwatch has eyes out to 1 click. Suggest immediate extraction of principal to safe site Bravo." "Negative," came back, brisk. "Route to Bravo compromised. Engineers en route to clear. We hold 3 mics." 3 minutes is a lifetime if you're the person someone wants to kill, and a blink if you're the person stopping it. Mirage at distance smudged in a way that made me itch. Not wind, not heat, interference, a shimmering with a heartbeat of its own. "Do you see that?" I asked. He sees it, already glassing far. "East Ridge just left of the white snag, 2,000 plus." 2,000, I echoed, not because I doubted him, because it's a number you say to make your hands honest. That's beyond our nice afternoon," he said, "not if it's glass and not if it's a drone." I sucked in air.
The shimmer resolved into a speck, then a not sky thing, a quadcopter. No, 6 rotors, heavier than Hobby, light enough to be a problem. It wobbled once in a way that told me whoever flew it wasn't a kid in the park. They were compensating for distance, fighting the wind with the control input a mile away. It carried something under its abdomen that didn't belong on a day like this. The shape was too blocky to be a camera. The glint on its edge was teeth. Drone, East Ridge, 2000 plus, inbound low, I said, calm because panic is useless. EOD, Navarro asked the net, are you hearing this? EOD copies, that's not ours. If it's carrying, that's likely a shape charge or, God help us, a frag ball. Overwatch, can you engage? At 2000? Sykes barked, absolutely not. You'll miss and blow it over the convoy.
I've got a hanger, I said. Underbelly, 3rd mounting point. If it drags through a switchyard with dry grass, fire, Navarro finished. And the coil becomes a story, I said. One with a lot of pictures. Cut their power, the liaison said over his own shoulder to someone who didn't need to be told twice. The drain shuddered. The world above it did not. The man on the caboose swore and punched the control box like it had emotions. He looked at our window again, this time not waving, this time bringing his pistol up with the casual confidence of a person who has never learned to be afraid of dying in the wrong place. My shot, Navarro said. No, I said. And I couldn't explain why, except that sometimes the world gives you the shape of a thing, and if you let someone else color it in, you'll dream in the wrong palette forever. He nodded once and gave me the breath between yes and go. I took it. The wind over the yard told a story about heat and dust and rails that radiated their own lazy weather. It pushed gently right to left. I held for a man on a moving platform and a heart that had decided to be steady at exactly the wrong moment. I broke the shot. His pistol hand opened like a flower. He looked at it with surprise even as he fell. He hit the platform with a sound that taught the pigeons a new word for alarm. The control box slid. My second round made it 2 control boxes. Down, Navarro said, even though we were the only ones up. We ran for the coil car. The liaison screamed at someone in a little booth, who screamed at someone in a bigger one, who screamed at the universe. The car rolled, slower than my blood, and faster than your stupid plan. Up close, the coil's lie was indecent. The tarp wasn't even dirty where the men who'd touched it would have left thumbprints. I tore at the seams and found boxes. Not steel, not explosives, not chemicals, paper. I sliced one open. Newspapers. Old. All in German. All with stories about us, about today, about the general, about me. Some in English from accounts that looked like ours until you cared. Sheets of headlines printed on poor ink, made to be burned pretty. Accelerant soaked, Navarro said, fingers coming away with a glisten. You light this and you get black smoke and words in the wind. They wanted a cloud, I said. They wanted to seed the sky with us. The dangling wire under the car ticked against the rail with the insolence of things too small to be a problem until they make your day a news cycle. Cut it, Navarro said. I slid under the car and tasted rust in the last hour of my life. I snipped the wire with a tool the liaison handed me with the solemnity of a priest offering a sacrament. The wire hissed one last time and died small. My radio clicked, the voice sighed, and this time it had the shape of a person in it. Tired, not old, frustrated like the weather gets when the mountain won't move. You're very good at not letting me finish, she said. You're very bad at choosing friends. They chose me first. Men like blue, men who wear colors like crowns. What do you want, really? Not slogans, not smoke. To take their air, she said simply. The air they breathe when they write orders that kill with a pen and call it policy. To make them taste how thin air gets when you're on the roof and the wind picks a side that isn't yours. Then stop making us chase your coins, I said. Come stand where air is honest. You wouldn't like me in person, she said, and there was a laugh in her voice that I realized had been scrimshot over grief. You'd recognize me. The line went dead again, not like a door slamming, but like a candle pinched. We made the coil safe.
We made the yard loud with people saying thank you and people saying this never happened and people saying which one of those pays better. The liaison promised to find a judge who still liked mornings. The general texted 3 words to a number that had found its way into his phone in the last year. Not today, Blue. At dusk, we crossed back into Germany. The day had eaten us and left the parts it didn't like. The base smelled like coffee and cotton and paper burning in a barrel somewhere downwind where a private thought he was invisible. The maintenance yard had a new caution tape necklace like a bored prom queen. We walked to the platform because endings happen where beginning insists they should. The silver disc Amir had saved me from sat on the table in a plastic bag like a souvenir I didn't ask for. The vent on the roof breathed like roofs do when they've held death and decided to keep air for the rest of us. A figure stood in the near dark by the ladder. He didn't jump when we approached because some men are done jumping. Major Sykes, Navarro said. My voice added a not unkind word, the way wind carries pollen you didn't ask for. He nodded to us and held out a folder. Inside printouts, photos, the fake accounts, a copy of the anonymous directive, a list of division back-channel servers with one circled. It wasn't ours, he said. The code in the header is wrong by a hair, the kind you only notice if you've written it 1,000 times. It mimics our cadence.